everybody. I hope everyone's had a good sleep. I certainly have. So yeah, my name's Nathan. I'm from Exertion Games Lab, RMIT. And yeah, I'm going to be talking about designing towards the promotion of positive pre-sleep, specifically through neurofeedback. So hence the pajamas. All right. So firstly, to begin, hands up anybody who sleeps, right? Like literally everyone. Okay, so hands up, like keep your hands up if you, we've got a few people who don't sleep, all right, I'm jealous. So keep your hands up if you sleep, and then like before you go to sleep, while you're falling asleep, you have your phone with you, all right? So like most people. Okay, keep your hands up if you know that's not good. Alright? Keep your hands up if you know that's not good and you feel really bad about it and it constantly nags your brain and you keep thinking like, you know, oh, this is like, okay, so some people don't feel bad about it. Okay, keep your hands up if the reason that you keep doing this is because like, once you put it down, you're just faced with the existential dread of existence. Oh yeah, some people put their hands back up. Yeah, so you guys are very much like me. Okay, so we all know that sleep and technology, you know, widely considered incompatible. Although we sort of aim to challenge this conception by looking at how we can promote sleep through technology. And so we do this through the design of our system called Interdream. So what Interdream is it's an interactive bed, so a bed that sort of moves up and down at the discretion of the artist running the system. So people sleeping within it also fitted with an EEG headset, and that takes, calculates the absolute power spectrum of each frequency bandwidth of the EEG data and sort of turns it into a bunch of different values. And those values are used to generate this visual imagery that's projected back to the participant through a VR headset and also around the room. And in the background during this experience, there's also a calming ambient soundtrack. And so I actually have a video of it for you all to watch. Alright, so following that, some of you are probably thinking like, alright, that might look cool, but how is this compatible with sleep? It doesn't look like it's specifically been designed for sleep. For example, like nobody wears a VR headset to sleep, unless you're me. But okay, so what Interdream was originally was an interactive art installation designed by the artists to sort of explore like the speculative future concept of being able to one day visit other people's dreams. And this was going on in Exertion Games Lab before I got there. When I joined Exertion Games Lab, I actually had a background in neuroscience and psychology. And on seeing this, I was immediately reminded of neurofeedback because of the way that it projects a sort of representation of the user's mental state, although very abstractly, a bit different to how neurofeedback is usually done. And I thought this was interesting because neurofeedback has recently been adopted in the treatment of like a myriad of different disorders, but specifically anxiety disorders and mood disorders. And then considering the mechanisms that these disorders interact with, specifically arousal for anxiety disorders, and mood and affect for mood disorders, you can kind of see that like a lot of the underlying sort of mechanisms are very similar to those that can be helped by neurofeedback, are similar to those that are present during sleep, which is like sort of like was brought to my mind by the fact that people were living like lying in a bed while they were using the thing. And I thought, well, this is really interesting because neurofeedback hasn't really been applied to sleep so much, specifically because you can't actually like do things while you're sleeping, but you can do things while you're falling asleep. So we thought to look at pre-sleep. So yeah, pre-sleep is the state before you fall asleep. And we know that with an increase in an individual's arousal, you have poorer sleep following after it, and an increase in negative mood and affect, you have poorer sleep following after it. So the same things that are like influenced by neurofeedback. So coming from a neuroscience and a kind of psychology background, the first thought I had was, oh, how can you like sort of, you know, see if this has any therapeutic effect or therapeutic benefit? That's kind of the study I had in mind when the artist asked me to actually create a study around this, this artifact. And so I went about doing that. But then this kind of evolved into something much more than a sort of assessment of like any therapeutic potential when I started taking on the design, the research designs of Exertion Games Lab that they sort of use as opposed to like the more traditional psychological research design. And so yeah, we had 12 participants. Each participant was measured on mood and affect before they went into the interdream system, and then we sort of put them into the interdream system. While they were in there, we recorded their EEG data as well, and then after it, we measured them on mood and affect again, and then finally we had a quantitative interview to sort of unpack we had a qualitative interview to unpack the quantitative data that we gained from the rest of the measures. And so what we found was there was a significant difference in the cognitive symptoms of pre-sleep arousal. So we found that people were significantly less cognitively active, or so cognitively aroused after using pre-sleep. And there was also a significant drop in negative emotion and negative affect. So emotion and affect being different, and emotion is a subjective experience of mood, whereas affect is like the physiological experience of mood. And then we also saw, so we didn't actually do any statistical analysis on the EEG data, but we used it to supplement the rest of the data, and we saw that there was like a markedly, the delta bandwidth was a lot more active than the rest of the EEG bandwidths, which is traditionally what you would expect to see within the realms of sleep. So that was interesting. And then, so using the qualitative interviews, we also developed a set of themes through thematic analysis. So these, the first being passivity and self-expression. So a lot of participants sort of talked about how they entered the system first and just sort of were passively taking it in, how it worked, just like letting it go. And then as they became more familiarized with it, more comfortable with it, they started to sort of explore what they could do by thinking different thoughts or trying different things. And sort of, there was also an element of mindfulness, which is kind of to be expected since neurofeedback has already been associated with mindfulness. But yeah, very closely tied to the last one of passivity and self-expression. And there was also restorative restfulness. So a lot of participants sort of said that they sort of felt rested afterwards, almost like having a really short power nap. And there was also the element of neurocentric agency. This one was particularly interesting in that participants sort of, all the elements of the system that they couldn't control with their brain, they thought was disconnected from the experience. So anything that was the visuals and stuff like that, they thought was very integral to it, whereas the bed and the soundtrack and everything, they felt as though it almost disrupted the experience. So, so taking all these different findings together, because it's a very broad sort of research design with a lot of different things that we're looking at, and taking them all together, so the cognitive processing, physiological mechanisms, and the lived experience of actually using interdream, we sort of brought them all together, and we we sort of concluded that the exploratory and creatively expressive nature of neurofeedback systems allowed for the promotion of positive pre-sleep states. So it was these like kind of explorative and expressive elements that helped people get into the pre-sleep sort of state of mind, positive pre-sleep state of mind. And using these findings, we created 3 design strategies. I'll talk about them very briefly. If you want like a very detailed description and examples on how to implement them, please look at our paper. But essentially, we have facilitate exploration. So a neurofeedback system should allow for a maximum sort of distribution of different states that people can explore. It can take many different forms, maybe by having like different ways the visuals can represent themselves. For example, we have neurocentric agency, so make sure that all the components in the system are actually operated, or at least if they're core to the system, are actually operated by the individual's brain. And then to facilitate self-expression. So it kind of ties in with exploration, but self-expression is more that there should be a connect between what is being represented and what the individual is thinking or feeling. So that concludes my talk, and I want you all to keep in mind after this that technology and sleep need not be incompatible. So thank you very much.